is the World Report, your compass to African news and the world beyond. I'm Fatia Mohamed Noor. In the headlines. Political uncertainty in Haiti as Prime Minister Ariel Henry resigns. Rwanda's President Paul Kagame agrees to meet DRC President Felix Tshisekedi over Eastern DR Congo crisis. 9 people dead and 78 others hospitalized after eating sea turtle meat on Zanzibar's Pemba Island. Nigeria's school abductions. More than 280 students abducted by armed men. And Boeing whistleblower John Barnett found dead. Welcome to the program. Now, Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry has agreed to resign after mounting pressure and increased violence in the country. This comes after regional leaders met in Jamaica to discuss a political transition in Haiti. The Prime Minister is currently stranded in Puerto Rico after being prevented by armed gangs from returning home. Ariel Henry, who had led the country on interim basis since July 2021, following the assassination of former President Jovenel Moise, had repeatedly postponed elections, saying security must be restored first. The capital, Port-au-Prince, and the surrounding region is under a month-long state of emergency, while a curfew has been extended. To the DR Congo crisis now, where Rwanda's President Paul Kagame has confirmed his readiness in engaging in talks with DRC's President Felix Tshisekedi in the ongoing crisis in the Eastern Congo. This announcement follows mediation efforts led by the Angolan government, with President João Lourenço serving as the African Union's mediator in the DR Congo crisis. The agreement was reached after a meeting held in Luanda, Angola's capital, between President Kagame and President Lourenço. Angola's foreign president, Tate Antonio, informed the press that President Kagame had agreed to meet President Tshisekedi at a time to be determined by the mediator. Minister Antonio also said both Rwanda and the DR Congo had consented to the meeting, with ministerial delegations from both countries actively working towards facilitating the dialogue. This development comes in the wake of escalating tensions in the eastern DR Congo, where clashes between M23 rebels and the Congolese forces have resulted in the displacement of over 100,000 people. To Zanzibar now, where 8 children and an adult have died after eating a sea turtle meat on Pemba Island in Zanzibar. 78 others have been hospitalized. As much as sea turtle meat is considered a delicacy by Zanzibar's people, over time it results in deaths from chelinotoxism, a type of food poisoning. In November 2021, 7 people, including a 3-year-old, died on Pemba after eating turtle meat, while 3 others were hospitalized. To Nigeria now, where armed men have abducted 15 pupils from a boarding school in northwestern Nigeria days after more than 280 students were abducted. The armed men broke into the Islamic seminary in the village of Gidan Bakuso in Sokoto State on Saturday and seized 15 children from the hostel as they slept. This was the 3rd incident of mass kidnapping in northern Nigeria since late last week, when more than 200 people, mostly women and children, were abducted by suspected fighters in Borno State. At least 287 students were taken hostage from a government primary and secondary school in Kaduna State. Let's go to the United States now, where a former Boeing employee known for raising concerns about the firm's production standards has been found dead. John Barnett had worked for Boeing for 32 years until his retirement in 2017. In the days before his death, he had been giving evidence in a whistleblower lawsuit against the company. Boeing said it was sudden to hear of Mr. Barnett's passing. It said that the 62-year-old had died from, and I quote, a self-inflicted wound on 9th March, and police were investigating. In a statement, Boeing said, "We are saddened by Mr. Barnett's passing, and our thoughts are with his family and friends." On the big story, we focus on the Sudan war. The country has been in a fresh civil war for almost 1 year now. On April 15th, 2023, violent clashes erupted between the Sudanese Armed Forces SAF and Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF under Mohamed Dagalo Hemeti. As of 21st January 2024, at least 13,000 to 15,000 had been killed and over 33,000 injured. Nearly 8 million people are internally displaced people, asylum seekers and refugees. This conflict has been exacerbated many of Sudan's existing challenges, including ongoing conflicts, disease outbreaks, economic and political instability, and climate emergencies.
This ongoing escalation, we have been seeing more displacement for the local population. And now, according to the last numbers that published by International Organization of Migration, the number of internally displaced population increased to 10.7 million. 9 of them displaced internally within Sudan states and different places. So these internally displaced people suffer a lot, and they displace several times from state to next state, moving from very risky areas, seeking safe places from the conflict.
So how did it get here? Well, Sudan had already been grappling with violence and displacement since the onset of the Darfur crisis in 2003. The recent fighting between SAF and RSF occurred when Sudan was already experiencing its highest levels of humanitarian need in a decade. The removal of longtime authoritarian leader Omar al-Bashir in 2019 had initially sparked great optimism for return to civilian rule in Sudan. But a military coup 2 years later dissolved the transitional civilian government, triggering political and economic turmoil. The two leaders fighting against each other worked together and carried out a coup, but now their battle for supremacy is tearing Sudan apart.
Why this desire by the generals to have the legitimacy or the authority of international groups? They are the supporters. One of the agonizing aspects of this conflict, Fathia, is the fact that it has attracted an arms race, regionally and internationally. The flow of weapons within that region has extremely increased, and that is an issue of concern for all of us within the East Africa and the Horn and Africa. And the reason, you see, by the time RSF, Hemeti was meeting regional leaders, actually, in terms of military might, he had almost overrun the Sudan forces, armed forces. But then I observed the trends like yesterday, when the UN Secretary General called upon the two generals to respect Ramadan, and he called for a Ramadan pause and reflection. Hemeti was willing. He said he is ready for that. But then Burhan refused and said he is not following that.
According to MSF, at least one child dies every 2 hours. Mortality rates for children and adults are well above emergency thresholds. There's also a massive malnutrition crisis in Zamzam camp. 25% of children in early January were found to be malnourished. The Zamzam camp was created in the early 2000s when extreme violence displaced hundreds of thousands of people.
So one of the challenges that we are facing now actually is the access to health facilities, mainly the access of the people in need in the most affected states. So normally with this increase of hostilities, we are trying to address the increase in humanitarian needs.